everyone, this is Neha Tulsyan from Crescent Creation. Welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm creating this beautiful slimline slider card with a matching envelope using products from different companies. To start, I have die cut the castle using a light grey cardstock from my stash using Lawn Fawn Build a Castle die. And now I'm going to ink up this castle die cuts using brick stencil and hickory smoke distress oxide ink. I'm using some scotch tape to tape the stencil and the die cuts together. And I'm using these new domed foam applicators from Rangers to do all my inking today. I recently got my hands on these domed foam applicators and I'm in love with these. They are much better quality than the previous mini foam applicators. And they are so nice to work with. I'll soon bring a video where I'll talk about different blending tools and give a review on these new domed foam applicators from Rangers. So here, once I'm done inking the castle using hickory smoke distress oxide ink, I thought it wasn't dark enough, so I added a little bit of black soot to the edges of the castle. And here is how it looks once all inked. Next, I'm going to go ahead and tape the side towers of the castle to the stencil and ink those two. Usually you will need only 2 towers to create your castle, but I wanted to add a little more dimension to my castle, so I ended up using 4 towers. So here I'm first using hickory smoke distress oxide ink to ink up all the 4 towers, and then I'll come in with black soot and add a little more darker color to the edges of all these towers. So here I'm just lightly inking the edges of these towers using black soot distress oxide ink. Once done inking, I'll go ahead and remove the 4 towers and clean the stencil. And now I'm going to go ahead and ink up the rest of the elements for the castle. This is the door of the castle that I die cut using the same light grey cardstock, and now I'm using hickory smoke and black soot distress oxide ink to ink it up. Now I'll go ahead and ink up the rest of the pieces. You can, if you want, not ink these pieces and just use the die cut as is, but adding color to these die cuts adds depth to these pieces and help them look more three-dimensional. I'm inking up the small flags and the window and other decoratives that go onto the castle. And once I'm done inking these pieces, I can go ahead and assemble my castle. But before that, I'll go ahead and ink up the rainbow since I have my ink pads and the silicone mat out here. The rainbow pieces are die cut out of Lawn Fawn stitched rainbow die. And I used white cardstock to die cut all my pieces so that I can ink them up using distress oxide inks. I'm using candied apple, ripe persimmon, mustard seed, cracked pistachio and tumbled glass distress oxide inks. You can, if you want, die cut these pieces out of colored cardstocks, but I like the look of inked die cuts more compared to colored cardstocks when it comes to pieces like this. So here I'm inking the second last piece of the rainbow using cracked pistachio distress oxide ink, and now inking the smallest or the last piece of the rainbow using tumbled glass distress oxide ink. Now that all my pieces are inked, I'll go ahead and start assembling. Here I'm assembling my castle first. I'm putting together the 4 towers here. I'm using my liquid glue from Barely Arts to do all the gluing today. And I'm using foam tape in few places to pop these castle and make it look more three-dimensional. Here I have added foam tape behind the towers, and now I'm going to go ahead and glue them in place. Gluing the second tower in place here. And then I'll add 2 more shorter towers in front of these towers to add little more dimension to my castle. You don't have to add these 2 extra towers, but I just thought that it makes the tower look a little more bigger. Here I'm adding the centerpiece that connects both the towers using some foam tape. And it's very easy to glue this in place as the die makes some embossed lines for you to know where this piece goes onto the castle die cut. Here I'm adding foam tape behind both the towers and trimming them in half using my scissors so that it can be glued in front of the 2 towers that I already glued. I'm making this card for my friend's daughter's birthday, and I know that I'm gonna hand deliver this, so I'm not worried about all the dimension that I'm adding to this card. But if you're gonna mail this card, I suggest not to add any foam tape while assembling this castle. The castle is still gonna look very beautiful and three-dimensional, and it will have less bulk for you to easily mail it. Here I'm coloring the heart from the banner using my Copic marker. Next I'm putting the flag and the flagpole together, and I'm using my crystal katana to help me pick up these tiny pieces. Now that these pieces are ready, I'll start gluing them to my castle. Here I'm gluing the two banners with the heart to the two tall towers, using the back of the crystal katana to help me place the die cuts properly in place. And now that I'm putting this together, I just wanted to talk to you about something. So I haven't been feeling a lot crafty lately. I haven't had my mojo for past few weeks, and I just didn't want to craft or do anything. I just wanted to sit and enjoy watching the YouTube videos instead of making one. Here I'm gluing the flags behind the top towers. I had to create this card because I knew I wanted to gift my friend's daughter a beautiful birthday card. Whenever I'm struggling with my mojo, this is what I do. I go ahead and look for a die that needs a lot of assembly, and I die cut pieces out of it and start assembling it. So here I'm just gluing the door knobs or the door handle, and then I'll glue the door in place. So I watched a YouTube video on how to assemble this castle. And while I was assembling this castle, it just put me into the flow, and I had ideas coming on how I wanted to finish this card. Here I'm gluing the window frame to the window on the top of the castle. And next I'm going to go ahead and use this diamond glitter stickles from Rangers and add shine to the castle. I added stickles on top of all those aqua color die cuts. It just made the castle look so glittery and shiny. Once the stickle is dried, I'll go ahead and add the backing to the window. This is the same negative piece of the window that you get when you die cut this castle. So this finishes my castle here. Now I'm going to go ahead and work on the rainbow. If you want, you can glue the rainbow pieces directly to your card front, but I prefer it to glue together first and then use on my card front. So here I'm gluing these rainbow pieces to a copy paper using some liquid glue. In this rainbow die set, you do get a die that will cut the base for your rainbow. But I didn't want to go ahead and do any more die cutting, so I just went ahead and glued these pieces on a copy paper, and then I'll trim them off using my scissors. The reason that I haven't been feeling very crafty lately was because that we were not feeling very good, and all of us at home were sick some time or the other for the past few weeks. My daughter goes to a daycare, and I guess she got her cold from there. So it started from her, then my husband got sick, and then it came to me, and I just was hit the hardest, I guess. I didn't get any fever, but the cold was really bad, and I was just very tired. I guess my body just needed some rest. I think it was just my body's way of telling me that I need to slow down and just rest for a bit. Now we're doing all good, we're all recovered, and we are all feeling 100%. And for all the curious minds out there, no, we didn't have COVID, thank God. So now back to my card. I've added stickers to the rainbow too, and I'm using my finger to spread it out and have a even coat all over. And I'll keep it aside to dry while I'll work on the letter die cuts. I've die cut the birthday girl's name out of white cardstock using Oliver Stitched ABC's die from Lawn Fawn. And here I'm inking the bottom of these die cuts using Peacock Feathers Distress Oxide ink, giving them a kind of an ombre effect. And then I added stickles to all these letters too. And then I kept them aside to dry while I work on my focal image. Sorry about the background noise. I am trying to do this voiceover in the daytime when my daughter is in the daycare, but there are some kids playing outside since it's summer break, so you will hear all the giggling and all the playful, happy noise from all the kids. For my focal image, I have this beautiful stamp from the My Favorite Things Magical Dragon stamp set. I'm stamping it onto a white cardstock using some black ink, which is Copic friendly, as I'm going to go ahead and use Copic markers to color this image. This stamp set from My Favorite Things is one of my very favorite stamp sets. I love the images, all the images in the stamp set. And why not? This is one of the Birdie Brown sets, and oh my gosh, I love all her images. Her illustrations are just fabulous. And here I have kept my coloring fairly simple, and I have not sped up the video a lot because I want you to see how I colored this image. I'm gonna go ahead and put some music for you while I color this image. So just grab your favorite beverage and enjoy the coloring. Here I'm just finishing coloring the girl. And now I'll take my black gel pen and add the eyes for both the dragon and the girl. And now I'm going to use my white gel pen and add dot details to their cheeks and lots of dot details to the dragon and highlights to the whole image. Once done, I'll go ahead and die cut this image off camera. Here I have all my pieces together and now I'm working on the bottom hill of the card. Here I have one of the stitched hillside border die from Lawn Fawn and I'm using that to die cut the hill for my card. I'm using Seedless Preserve Distress Oxide ink to ink this up. But I thought that the Seedless Preserve is a little dark, so I just used Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide ink and added a layer of it on top of the hill to dull that Seedless Preserve. Now I'm going to go ahead and work on the sky. For this I have a white panel that measures 3¼ inches by 8¼ inches. And I'm inking the sky using picked raspberry, spun sugar and wilted violet distress oxide inks. I'm using the Slimline Cloud Stencil from My Favorite Things to create the clouds. I'm using one blending brush for both my pink shades and one for my purple. I'm adding one layer of picked raspberry cloud, another spun sugar, and the third is wilted violet. And I'm just repeating that over and over again until I finish inking the whole panel. While I'm switching between the picked raspberry and spun sugar with my one blending brush, I'm just using a paper towel and rubbing the brush to clean off the excess ink. Here I have reached to the top of my panel and now I'm going to go ahead and add some spun sugar to the edges of this panel so that the white areas in between the cloud doesn't look so stark white and they have a little bit of color. Next I'll go ahead and smoosh some wilted violet distress oxide ink onto an acrylic block, add some water to it and using my fan brush splatter the whole background. Off camera, I'll heat this with the heat tool to speed up the drying process. And now I'll work on the interactive mechanism of this card. Here I've placed all the elements onto my card front along with one of the slider die from Lawn Fawn Slide On Over die set. This die matches the arch of the rainbow and I thought it was perfect to cut that slider mechanism just on top of the rainbow to show that the dragon is flying on top of the rainbow. So I taped the die using some post-it tape to my card front and I die cut it. Now I'm gluing that negative piece onto a black cardstock that's slightly bigger than my card front and it will be glued behind my card front, adding a black border all around it. Now I'm going to use this slider disc from My Favorite Thing and add strong double-sided tape at the back and front of it. I'll remove the backing of one side of the double-sided tape and glue this disc to a penny. A lot of people do not like to use penny, so you can die cut penny size circles and add that instead. But I like the weight that the penny adds and it helps the element to move more freely. Here I just added the penny to the slider area and now I'm gluing my dragon image on top of it. Next I've added foam tape behind this panel, making sure I'm not restricting the free flow of the penny. I've added 2 layers of foam tape here to help the penny move freely. Now removing the backing of all those foam tape and I'll glue this panel to my black cardstock. Here is my spinner card. Everything is moving beautifully and I'm so happy. Next I'm using my powder tool and adding a little bit of powder to the slider area to make sure everything moves smoothly. All is left is to glue all the elements. Here I just trimmed off the excess of the hill and now I'm gluing it in place. But I made a mistake. After all this, I made a mistake here. So while trimming the hill, I actually trimmed a 1/4 inch more than I was supposed to. And I was like, I don't want to go ahead and ink this again. I will have to die cut and ink it again. I was not in that mood. So I just went ahead and used that excess piece that I trimmed off earlier and glued that in place. And it fit like a puzzle because it's the part of that piece, but I just have a joint in that place. But it didn't bother me so much. The amount of work that I had to go ahead and do it. Compared to that, I thought having a joint is better. Tell me in the comment section below what you would have done. Would you would just go ahead and glue the piece as I did, or you would just go ahead and ink up a new fresh piece so that you don't have a joint? Here I'm using some double-sided tape to glue down the rainbow just beneath that slider mechanism, making sure it's not restricting the free flow of my dragon. Here I'm gluing an extra cardstock piece behind the castle to level it up, and now I'll glue it in place using some liquid glue. Next, I'll go ahead and glue all the letters to form the name Alicia for my birthday girl. I'm just gluing this with liquid glue. I'm not adding any dimension to these letters. I wanted to keep the focus towards the dragon and the castle. So I thought if I add a little bit of dimension to the letters will pop out a lot, which I didn't want. Next, I'm white heat embossing the sentiment happy birthday from the happy 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 stamp set from Lawn Fawn onto a black strip of cardstock. I have prepped the surface using anti-static powder tool, and now I'm stamping the sentiment using a clear ink. I'll go ahead and pour some white embossing powder onto this stamped sentiment and heat set it using my heat tool. I'll use my scissors to trim off the excess strip and cut a fishtail on one end. And glue this in place with some foam tape. Next, I'll use some liquid glue and glue this to a card base that measures 8.5 by 3.5 inches when folded. For the inside of my card, I'm stamping the sentiment, "It's your birthday, light up the candles" from the Mama Elephant Dragon Wishes stamp set. I'm also stamping a cake image on top of the sentiment from the same stamp set, and that finishes my card. To create a matching envelope, I used the Slimline envelope SVG file from our store and cut out this piece out of a 12 by 12 pattern paper. I used my brother's scan and cut to cut this out. You can use any electronic machine that you have. The SVG file does all the scoring for you, so it's easy to create the envelope. I'm adding a little bit of double-sided tape to the inside of one of the longer flaps. You want to use any strong adhesive for gluing these flaps together. I added a little bit of liquid glue to make sure that my flaps are glued in place. Gluing the bottom flap and finishing the envelope here. Lastly, I stamped the same dragon image to the outside of the envelope. And this is how my card looks with a matching envelope. So this was my card for today, showing you how to create a personalized birthday theme slider dragon card. All the products used are listed in the description box below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And go ahead and hit that notification bell to get notified every time I upload a new video. Here are a few more videos that you might like to watch. Thank you for visiting. Have a nice day.